So non-business analysis is what I am talking about. What is business analysis is something which we have to have a hang of. What is not business analysis is what we have to understand. What usually happens in interviews, or when I conduct an interview, or when I attend some interview, there is this question: do you do project management? Do you do resource management? Do you lead a team? But the answer always has to be no. That's because a business analyst will never do any of this. And in bigger organization, there is definitely a criteria for a business manager and a project manager. Make sure you say you do none of these. This is very helpful for your interviews. All right. So what is the business analyst knowledge areas? So what does the business analyst know? The business analyst will know enterprise analysis. When I say enterprise analysis, it will be at the enterprise level, where it could be from the raw material procurement for the manufacturing the product, through the manufacturing process, then the inventory management, and then finally the finances, the HR, and finally till the product goes to the end user, which would be like shipment of the product, and then finally once the product is shipped, then there will again be a billing thing, and then finally till it goes to the customer support. So the complete enterprise analysis is something which the business analyst should have a knowledge on. If it's a small project, it is still okay. But when we are talking about manufacturing domain or industry, where it could be like shipyards, it could be where your inventory, where you're going to procurement. So we need to have enterprise level understanding of what the business functionality is. How does the business function within that enterprise? This is very important. Then we have to have an understanding of requirements planning and management. Like who will be the person who will give me the requirements? How do you plan the requirements? Which requirement has to be taken first? Which one has to be elaborated first? And then manage it. Like okay, now this is the requirement. The requirement is not complete. There has to be few other steps which are required. So that will become part of requirement management. And finally, making sure that the requirement, whichever is gathered at the stakeholder, at the business stakeholder, is finally given as is finally delivered to the client. So all that part will become your requirement management. So if you have heard about traceability of requirements, all that will become part of your requirement management. Requirement elicitation is gathering the requirements, taking the requirements from the stakeholders, and then giving it to people, whoever will help you develop software with those requirements. And the requirement analysis and documentation is something you understand. Requirements communication. This is one major thing which most of the business analysts miss in doing. The first thing is, when you say communication, communication need not be oral. It could be oral or verbal. It could be oral, verbal, schematic, oral, verbal, schematic, documents. So all the possible ways of giving knowledge transition, all the possible ways of communication will become part of your requirement communication. This is one part which all of us should concentrate on. Like you will also have to concentrate on what the other person is telling you. It becomes very important for you to listen to your stakeholder, whoever is giving you the requirement. So when I say communication, it need not always be the person, whoever the business analyst giving out the requirement, but it could be the business analyst taking the requirement from the stakeholder. So everything, when you take a requirement, make sure you inform it to everybody and say that this is the requirement which I have in my hand, and this is how it will be communicated to everybody. It could be your knowledge transmission sessions, it could be your interviews, it could be one-on-one sessions, it could be your documents, it could be your schema, it could be your user stories, it could be your update on your Jira or your TFS. Okay, Jira and TFS are also used to update user stories. So there could be a lot of things, or there could be your business process modeling documents where if there is a new process coming into the picture, the information will be put in there. And then the information also has to be The business analyst should also be well versed with solution assessment and validation. We have a requirement. There will be somebody who will design the solution for you. So business analyst should have an understanding of what solution is being developed out of the requirement and validate the requirement if it actually caters to the business need. This information is very important for the business analyst to understand. Uh, okay, just an update to everybody. Please listen to this session with lot of interest, because this is something which you will have to talk in your interviews whenever you are attending one, because this is something which everybody will be looking for, and this is definitely not something theoretical.
The other. What is the first one? What is enterprise analysis? Say that again.
Enterprise analysis is having the knowledge of how a business actually functions. Like, consider manufacturing domain. I have taken that example. Consider manufacturing domain. So when you have to manufacture, consider I have to manufacture a mobile phone. So there would be somebody who would send me raw materials to make that mobile phone. I will have to maintain the inventory for the raw materials. Then I would have to send it to the manufacturing section where it would be assembled. Once that is assembled, then it would get into packaging section. Then it will go into sales and for the marketing. And then finally, when it is delivered into the different stores for it to be sold, and finally when it is actually shipped to the customer. So this is one level of understanding which they should have. Like, what goes into the inventory. Not the workflow, it has to be the complete business understanding, the complete domain.
So the business workflow, or how the business functions.
Enterprise, the complete enterprise. When I say enterprise, it would be at an enterprise level which is bigger than business.
Okay, so the domain or the industry, how that works.
Exactly, the industry, how it works. Perfect.
Okay. And one more question. So once you do that, what do you mean by the requirement planning? Before you do the collection, which is the requirement elicitation, what is the planning of the requirements?
Okay. So before you would get into an understanding, the scoping should be done.
Oh, the scoping is planning, is it?
No, not just plan. Let me complete it.
Okay.
Scoping has to be done. When scoping is done, there would be one final expectation, like one objective which has to be achieved. When we had discussed about drivers, we discussed about there is one object which is being planned to be achieved. So what is the objective? Where are we heading towards? And how will we head towards is the requirements planning. And at the same time, which stakeholder is to be met at what time, what information has to be gathered from a specific stakeholder also has to be planned. So, there is a lot of planning, or, once you have some document in place, we will have to discuss about what questions have to be asked. If they answer yes or no to some question, if they answer yes, what other questions? If they answer no, what other questions? So all this will become part of your requirements planning. And management would be, there is a specific requirement. How will we go ahead with this? What is the next step to this requirement? What is the scope of this requirement? Where will it end? All that information will get into requirements management. For people to understand, requirement traceability is one of the requirements management techniques.
Okay.
So these are the knowledge areas which were defined in BABOK 2, BABOK version 2. So the same thing I put in there, so it's okay. So what does BABOK do? Please have a look at BABOK, at least for the next session. Please have an understand, read the index of BABOK. I know it's a huge book, there will be no need of a trainer, but then just have a look at what is there at BABOK, what is there in the index. If you want any other course topics also, we can discuss from BABOK. Okay, this is like Bible for everybody in business analysis world. Okay? Now, moving ahead. And BABOK, there is one point. This is not how business analysis instruction manual. How to can never be defined, because the information which a work which business analyst does is always can always be scrutinized. Each person will work in a different way. So there is no one right way of working as a business analyst. So if somebody says this is how a business analysis should be done, then say, all right, I know it. Because each of them will have a different perspective, each of them will work in a different conditions, each of them will have a different requirements. I'll have to talk about an example here. There is a clear statement in BABOK which says non-functional requirements should never be put as part of functional requirements. But in real world, it does happen. Like, when I write a requirement, I should never write any screen related data as my user story. It says, please select and click on this button. I should never write a requirement say that click on the button. It could be part of your non-functional requirements, but never as part of functional requirements. That's because today it is button, tomorrow I would change it to a drop down. So the non-functional requirement, that is the screen level information, has changed, but then the functionality has not changed. But then in the real world, people still write click on this button, change this, drop down. The information as written, which are not BABOK best practices. The reason why I say it is not a good practice, tomorrow when their functionality change comes into picture, all that a person has to do is go to the non-functional requirements, change the non-functional requirements and publish a new version. But if you put these non-functional requirements as part of functional requirements, you'll have to change the whole document, which is unnecessary.
So what do you say that what happens, functional requirement should be done before or after, or it could be, what does it say? So my question was that I was trying to understand what you said about the functional requirement and the non-functional requirement. I understand you said the non-functional should not be a part of the functional. So in case the functional requirement changes, there should not be a need to change the non-functional because there will be an extra step. But as per BABOK or as per whatever you're saying, what did you say should be done before first? I mean the functional or the non-functional?
Okay, the requirement should always be, functional requirements should always be discussed first. Only after you define your functional requirements, that's when you can get into non-functional specifications. Like, I'll give you an example. Consider you have to have a patient registration in a hospital. That is the functional requirement. So what fields will go into patient registration will be a non-functional requirement. So you need to define your functional requirements before you even discuss about non-functional requirements.